It's March, folks. The madness is going to pick up soon. And welcome to this edition of Hoist the Colors. For this episode, we're going to switch things up. The Big East tournament for the women starts this week, Friday in Mohegan Sun. And the Seton Hall Pirates got the 3 seed thanks to a 2-0 week after beating DePaul and Xavier. And they'll face either one of those teams Saturday night in Connecticut. And joining us, it took a little while, but we finally made it happen. The head coach of the Pirates, Tony Bozzella, we finally got him on. Coach, thanks so much for joining Pat and I for this week's episode.
Tim, Pat, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited. A little hoarse from yelling a little bit, the officials, but I'm ready to go. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about this past week. You got to have both of these games against DePaul, especially on senior night, and then at Xavier. Let's start with the DePaul game. It took a little while for you guys to get going, but thanks to Savannah Catalan having a career night. What more can you say about the comeback effort that you guys put on, dominating the second and third quarters and getting a real solid win in your final home game of the year?
Yeah, Tim, you're really accurate when you said, they're a solid team. DePaul, very young, with a great senior. They made it difficult for us. I mean, they're aggressive, they're tough. Jory Allen's one of the top 5 players in the league, and we knew we were gonna be in for a big battle. I mean, they got a kid, Kate Clark, back, and I was really impressed how fast she shot the ball and what her release was. She had 18 points on us. But we have Savannah Catalan played really well. I mean, we played the game also without our sensational freshman Jada Eads. We had other kids step up, and I was really proud. I thought Caden Lawson really helped us a lot in this game.
Now,
Yeah,
Pat, go ahead. Yeah.
I was in the building. That was my one trip up to Walsh for a women's game. I just couldn't make it. Your tickets were so hard to get for weekends this season.
Yes,
So
very hard.
to your credit, you had all those sellouts. So I had to
We did well.
hang around for senior night. I was glad. My wife and I were glad we did. It was sort of just telling about how experienced your team is, and you didn't mention, of course, the player who's created the most buzz, Faith Mazonis. And the one thing I noticed that she's sort of a calming presence, in part because of her experiences at Maryland, in part because she's such a talented ball handler, a good shooter, a good passer. She does everything well. She's sort of the jack of all trades, and you can tell what type of skill set she has. That at any given point, she was going to make a play that was going to allow you guys to hold on to the lead in that game because DePaul kept making mini runs. Allen had a couple of good runs. You mentioned Clark, who reminded me of another player named Clark, who's pretty familiar in the women's game, by the way. So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, Faith Mazonis, of course, was as great as Catalan was. I was also impressed by how Faith Mazonis and some of the other players on the team played on Thursday.
Pat, you're really accurate in that assessment. I mean, Faith has been an unbelievably calming presence for us this year. Mature, experienced, has fit right in. There's so many things that don't even show up on the stat sheet. And then there's a lot of things that show up on the stat sheet. I have to tell you, she's made my life so much easier as a coach this year. And we're blessed to have Faith. And we have faith because of it, honestly.
And speaking of that, Saturday was a real challenge because Xavier, they're at the bottom of the league, but they had all the motivation to play the spoiler to you guys, and for the first half, they were doing exactly that. What really flipped the switch for you guys in the second half?
They call this Sunday the day of upsets. In men's and women's college basketball, especially women, there were many, many upsets. 6 top 25 teams were upset, and we were almost one of them. I mean, Xavier played really physical basketball. I thought this was the one game we really missed Jada as much as anything, needing a second ball handler, along with to add to Savannah and Amari. They put a lot of pressure on those kids. They went into the game being very aggressive. I mean, they had 28 fouls called on them. They probably could have had another 28, to be honest with you. But, I'll give Xavier credit. They're well prepared. They forced us to shoot the ball from the perimeter. We did not shoot the ball well. It was a struggle all game. In fact, they had a chance to tie the game on the last play of the game, and honestly, I thought it might go in. And Yaya made a great defensive play. It's just been a really, really, tough game on the road. You know, it was just we really were in for a battle, but all year we've had a kid step up. This game it was Caden as well, and Jacayla Craft stepped up 6 points off the bench when we were struggling to score. We only had like 8 points with 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. Jacayla came up, gave us 6 big points there, got us going, and it's really the story of the team, guys. Each game we've had yes the consistent great players like Faith and Savannah and Jada, but we've had someone step up a lot. The Yayas of the world, Caden's, Jacayla's game, Janaya as well. Messiah Hunter's had a great year for us as well. Obviously, Mari's steady all the time, but we wouldn't have been as successful without these kids stepping up.
And I think it's another point, and that's we'll get to this later on. But it's another point as to why you guys ended up going 13-5 in the Big East, because there were in other seasons there'd be times you would end up losing a game like this
Absolutely.
because you just didn't have the experience and the players who knew how to make plays, closing plays late in the game. I mean, one of your best games this season was Georgetown at Walsh when you were exchanging 3 pointers at the end of regulation,
Remember
and
that.
and Georgetown kept coming at you, and you had to play them out up until the final second. So I'm just using Georgetown as one example, sort of similar to yesterday, when you're playing an opponent who is matching you shot for shot or turnover for turnover or what the situation is, and your team's finding a way to end up with more points at the end of the game than the opposition.
Yeah, you're right, and I think again you've done your research, and that's why you guys do a great job on this podcast. We lost 6 games, I think, last year with the game tied or us winning with under 5 minutes to go. And we just couldn't get a closer. And this year we've had it. Really, Faith had a lot to do with it. Faith obviously made the shot against Villanova, but she's also been a great calming presence. And all those games that I think we lost last year, we've won this year. And a lot of it's because of our calming, our kids getting older, making a shot here and there. But Faith had a lot to do with it. She really has.
So I know you mentioned, really missing Jada Eads Sunday, needing that additional ball handler. So, I mean, definitely curious to know what her status is going to be for the upcoming biggest tournament. You got to be content with the fact that she's got 5 days to rest to get ready for a Saturday show now.
Yeah, I mean, we're hopeful she'll play, to be honest. We need her to practice a few days just to get her rhythm back. I know she's working really hard at the training staff. She got an ankle injury. I think she'll be out there because I think she'd cut her leg off before she wouldn't play out there. Because that's the type of competitor she is, and she's raised real tough. But she's going through the progress. She shot today. Seeing the doctor tomorrow. Our trainer is working really closely with her. So, we anticipate her giving everything she can. If she's ready to go out there, she will, and we're hopeful. I'll say that. We need her. I mean, we're in the playoffs now. You need your best players.
For sure. And then we get to if we look at the tournament itself, obviously we've just talked about the two teams you could play on Saturday. Yeah, and fortunately for you, you just saw DePaul and you just saw Xavier. So you're really up to speed with those two teams you're going to play Saturday. And obviously, given the way the two games played out both last week, the games you played last week, it's always tougher up at the Big East tournament than you would ever think it would be on paper. So then that transition. Let's go on to some of the more difficult challenges. I know you don't want to look past it, Coach, but you're going to see Creighton again. And what a Jim Flannery. I don't know how he's kept that team together for 4 years. Some of the players on his roster were there when they pulled maybe one of the biggest upsets in recent NCAA tournament history when they beat Iowa out in Iowa City when they made that great Elite Eight run in 2022. So give us a couple of thoughts about what you think of yet another matchup with the Morgan Malleys and the Lauren Jensens and those players from Creighton who you've been in battles with for the last 4 seasons.
Yeah, we played them in the playoffs every year, Pat. Ridiculous, pain in the neck. But we did beat them on the shot by Maya Bembry. They beat us on the shot by Morgan Malley. So 2 games came down to literally the last shot. We've lost in overtime to them in that year, and then in that playoffs last year we lost by a couple. They've all been great games. We want to play them, to be honestly and blunt. We need the opportunity to play a top 25 team to help our resume for the NCAAs. I mean, I want them to win. I want them to play us because that'll give us a chance. Will it be extremely difficult? Of course, they're a great team, well coached. Jensen, Malley, and Morganson have been there, and Brake have been there forever. He's done a great job of keeping them together. I mean, I was surprised Wozniak didn't finish there as well, but we want to play them because we need that opportunity to get another win for our NCAA resume. I mean, that's the biggest battle right now that we're having, as you guys know on Twitter. And I've tried to make it clear. I tried to make it clear to the Big East today. They have to do a better job of supporting us publicly. And they say they do it behind the scenes with the NCAA and the selection committee. They need to do it publicly. But that's just another story. But I want to play them because we have to beat them. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be easy; it'll be really hard. But in order for us to put another impressive game on the resume, we have to. But we're going to have a really hard first game. We just played DePaul and Xavier, and DePaul gave us everything we had on the road. And we're fortunate to win that game. And honestly, at Xavier, they outplayed us. They had great strategy. Billy did a great job preparing them. So we're gonna have a hard first game. I just want to get a couple of days of rest, get to that first game, play well, hopefully play healthy, and then if we are fortunate to win that game, then yes, I do hope we play Creighton.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I don't know if Jory Allen's going to have as sort of bad shooting performance, but that's also a
No.
testament to the great defense that your team played against Allen. I mean, look, obviously, Allen is number one on your game plan when you're doing a scout on a team like DePaul because Allen obviously is leading the Big East in scoring. Allen can do it from the inside, do it from the outside, do it from the foul line. I noticed I pointed out that she went 13 for 14 from the foul line. So
Yeah,
even if you foul her, she's going to hurt you.
yeah, and
She's
she
going to put
draws a
those
lot of
points on
fouls
the
too.
board.
Yeah, absolutely. And drawing the fouls and everything. And then Johnson Matthews and Clark shoots it really well, and they have solid point guard play. So we're in for a tough battle.
so I definitely got to ask you, if you guys win that quarterfinal game Saturday night, I mean, I joked saying, I mean, I don't want to knock on wood, but when you guys win on Saturday, um, you'll have a chance to play on Big Fox, which I believe that will be a first for your program to play on national TV in that semifinal game on Sunday, presumably against Creighton. I mean, not only will it be a great opportunity for your signature win, but for your program to get national recognition. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
And that'd be a great opportunity to play on Big Fox. We've played on FS1 a lot, ESPN obviously, and we played on the Turner Broadcasting this year as well. But no, I mean, I just want to get to the game. I'd be excited if it's on Fox. Hopefully, John Fant is doing it because he's the best. But we got a long way to go for that. I'd like to get it, but let's hope we can get to it.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's the Big East tournament. Tim knows better than anybody else because he's been to the Big East tournament a few times. He's been there, so he knows how you can get you get strange results from everybody else, but then Connecticut never loses.
No.
I mean, I guess it's a benefit. They get to play in front of 10,000 crazy people up
Yep.
at the Sun. It doesn't. Connecticut could play in the darkest place in Connecticut, and they would fill the building. They could
They
probably
would.
put them in the football stadium up at Connecticut and fill the building for some of their games. So, and
Absolutely.
that's just the way it goes. I mean, it's good for the conference that you can get a full house into the Sun, but I'm sure as one of their competitors, you look at that and you're like, how come my conference tournament's practically a road game because all these Connecticut fans and it's a compliment to them that they travel to the Sun, and the Big East has such a respect for them that they're going to play that tournament in the Sun. Probably the Sun will probably be as permanent a site as Madison Square Garden is for the men's tournament.
And it should be because while it isn't, they do get a lot of fans. It's a great tournament atmosphere, and those fans stay for our games. I really need them to root for us, please, if you guys listening to it. But it is a great atmosphere, and for many years we played the game for nobody. When we played out in DePaul, we just couldn't draw well, and it was very frustrating. DePaul themselves did a good job with the tournament, but we just couldn't draw well, and we needed a place. And it's fun. It's a great event. If you've never been, you should come. You go to the casino. They have great restaurants. You walk to the game. Once you stay at the casino, you never have to leave. There's shopping and there's arcades and there's movie theaters and our girls do, bowling. They have all that stuff. And it's a tournament atmosphere. Everyone's walking around. And then you get the opportunity to play in front of a good crowd and a great arena.
Yeah, I will say I definitely miss those trips to Mohegan Sun. Definitely gonna make it happen again one of these days because I will not lie to you. I miss having all those amenities and whatnot at my disposal. I mean, just
It's
definitely
fun.
have all that.
It
So,
really is.
I mean, well, let's talk about that resume because I was looking at bracketology from Charlie Cream being obviously the most notable one, and your team has been moving up. You're currently on the next four outline, although I feel like you could have earned you deserve a little more respect than that. If I'm being maybe biased, but I'm just being honest because of the fact that again, no bad losses. You've won 21 games. I believe that's the first time you've done that in the regular season since I believe 2016 when Shakina Richardson was running point for you.
Yeah. We've I think won 19 games. No, we won 24 games the year we went to NIT finals, which is after that as well.
I was just talking like
Right.
regular
Yeah.
season,
Yeah.
picking up
No.
20
No. No.
wins.
You're right. No, it's been great. I disagree with Charlie. I'll publicly say it. I'll privately say it. He's not doing his homework. He could say he is, and he wrote that he did not think Seton Hall or Marquette would even have a chance. And I don't understand how you put three teams from the Ivy League. Their league is ranked 10th on the net. You want to use the net, then you can't use it how you want to choose it. You have to use it the way you choose it. Their league is 10th, our league is 5th. That's a big difference. That's a big difference right off the bat. They don't play any nationally ranked teams in their league. We play 4 games against nationally ranked teams. We have the number one net team in the country. They have no one that's near number one. They play 4 teams in their league that are 4 of the worst teams in college basketball. No offense to those teams. They're not good. They're not having good years. They're rebuilding. Whatever the sake is. We have only one team that's above 155, I think, in the net. They have 4. That's 8 games they're playing against it. We're playing 1, if not 2 games against Xavier, depending on who you have. The type of athlete, the games that you play against Connecticut, how you're beat up both mentally and physically after those games. In addition, then you throw Creighton in, which is a nationally ranked team. They don't have those teams in the Ivy League or the A10, and they're both great leagues. Don't get me wrong. I think Richmond's a great team, coached by a close friend, lost to our 10th place team, Georgetown. I mean, that's a fact. Those teams, everyone wants to pick and choose their wins. Seton Hall has not lost to a team above 60. All 8 teams that we've lost to have over 20 wins. We have no bad losses. We have all solid victories. We've played shorthanded for a majority of the year. This is hopefully for the game on Saturday be one of the first times all year we have our whole team. We've played 3 teams in the top 10. All those things matter and all those things are worth something. People want to pick and choose, but if you go outside their league, these teams, a team like Minnesota has a non-conference strength of schedule of 363. There's only 365 teams, but their non-conference strength of schedule is 363. I mean, how do you award that? The NCAA is going to allow you to have that softer non-league schedule and get into the tournament, then we don't need to play any of these non-league games. Let's just move on. If we're only going to go by if we're only going to go by a computer, then let's just move on. I'm sure Charlie Cream hasn't watched us play one time, maybe against UConn, but he hasn't watched us play any of these other teams that we're playing that are good teams. At the end of the day, and no offense, to put some of these lower mid-major teams above us based on a number is inexcusable. Look at our quad two and quad three wins and record. It's better than anybody's. I would. This is not an insult on the other programs. This is just you have to value that we're the fifth ranked conference. The fifth ranked conference should not get less teams than the 10th ranked conference or the 11th ranked conference or the 12th ranked conference. And that's how he has it. And that's disappointing. Here in one breath, he's saying the big four deserve all the teams. And his next breath is, well, I'm going to bypass the fifth best conference and go to the 10th. Like, that's inexcusable. And, he doesn't explain it correctly, and he picks and chooses the numbers he wants. Hopefully, the committee is going to go by the 11 criteria that they have and respect the fact that we have played a really competitive schedule in an unbelievably hard league with arguably the best team in the country in our league and go from there. Just all you have to do is just take a look, take Seton Hall, put them in those other two leagues, and if you don't think they would win those leagues or be in the top two, you're foolish.
You're talking about the Ivy and the Atlantic 10.
I am.
Right. Now, of course, then the flip side, not to play devil's advocate.
No, please do.
I'll play devil's advocate. You played Princeton, you lost to Princeton.
Yeah, we lost. We lost by 3 points in our fourth game of the year. There's no question they won that game. And right now, I didn't say, Charlie, you can't just go by. I mean, Princeton also lost to Quinnipiac. Does that mean Princeton shouldn't get in over Quinnipiac? No, but if it's that close, yes, Princeton deserves it. We play Princeton every year. I have tremendous respect for their program. But, Harvard and we were supposed to play Columbia. We had a home game scheduled. Columbia called and canceled it. We haven't had a chance to play Harvard, but Harvard's well coached and they have a good team. They won the second game of the year at Indiana, but Butler also beat Indiana. So they're our ninth place team. So I'm not saying, that, but when you look at the whole body of work, when you look at in January and February, they played four teams, 8 games against teams that are ranked 180 and above in their league. That's really hard. When your league is ranked 10th, which theirs is, and ours is 5th, which ours is, that's the league you're in. I mean, it is what it is, but you can pick and choose one game here and there. Like I said, Richmond lost to Georgetown. Do I think Georgetown's better than Richmond? No, but they did lose that game. So when you play in our league, there's a lot more chances for upsets. When you play in the Ivy League, nobody's losing to those bottom four teams. And that's not a knock on them. They're just not there this year. That's all.
I'm glad you mentioned Minnesota, Coach, because one of the things that I have an issue with when I look at men's bracketology and when I study this a little bit more closely is you look at some of those teams that are in the SEC and the men's side, like the Arkansas, the Texas, and the Oklahoma, and the fact that they have all these quality wins is because every game in their conference is a quad one win. So if you go 4-10 in the SEC, you get 4 quad one wins that mid majors in the men's don't have. So you look at a team like Minnesota in the Big Ten on the women's side, all of their games, except for, I guess, the bottom of that league, are all quad one. Everyone in the top 12 or 13 is a quad one opponent. So they get to play, 12 or 13 games against quad one, whereas you only, I think, if I know correctly, only had, I think, 5 games against quad one. So there's an imbalance that the committee also has to factor that, look, maybe, and you said this a couple of minutes ago, if you had the 12 or 13 quad one opportunities, you're going to win 4 or 5 of those games. And you're 21, you could even be 19-8 right now and be in as good a position as you are at 21-8.
Yeah.
Based on your record.
Right. And the other thing that really people don't realize is that the NCAA has set up, and I think this was done by the Power Four conferences, our quads are different than the men's quads. We cut off at 132. If you're 133 or above, it's a quad 4 game no matter what. That's not fair. We have plenty of teams that are in the Big East that are 80 to 110. They would all be quad 2s and 3s on the men's side. On the women's side, they're quads 3s and 4s. On the men's side, quad 4 starts at 255. So you're telling me anything from 133 to 365 on the women's side's considered equal. That's not true. There's no way the bottom teams in those other leagues are equal to the medium teams in our league. And that's what you're saying, because we have a couple that are 135. And, Butler beat Indiana. That shouldn't be a quad 4 game. for Indiana. That should be like a quad 2 or 3, and that's what we're looking at. And I'm on a committee. I've helped form a committee through the WBCA that's going to have a meeting with the NCAA or who's ever in charge of these quads and say, listen, you can't have that much of a disparity between the women's game and the men's game. You can't. And the answer when we had it last year was, well, this is the first year, and we went back 10 years of data. Why would you go back 10 years of data? The women's game has changed so much in 5 years. But again, that was geared towards the Power Four wanting to have all their teams, which are usually 1 to 110, equal to anything. And when we have a team that's 135 or 140, that's considered a quad 4, and that's not fair. It's not fair to the Ivy League or the A10 either. Here I'm supporting them, but that's why those teams have most of their games are quad 4s. They really are, and that's
Right.
not
The flip
fair.
side, maybe make one more point about that. You would think that Dan Gavitt, who, a lot of the talk in the NCAA has been about trying to make the women's tournament equal to and mean as much as the men's tournament. But the point you're making is true. That way, you're talking two different tournaments here. So not only are the women's teams so they were at a facilities disadvantage that unfortunately that got pointed out in a major manner when they held the tournament 5 years ago. But now you're talking about the two tournaments being set up entirely different. And the other thing I think you pointed out I don't know if you pointed out or somebody else pointed out that that's the sheets that they bring in. They talk so much about all these analytical things on the men's side that goes into a resume roster sheet. On your side, they finally put in a women's version of something called wins above bracket,
Yeah,
which has been a very hot topic in men's bracketology
very.
because a lot of people think that wins against bracket will sort of make it look like, let's say, how the NFL does that determines playoff tiebreakers, because you'll
Yes.
look at strength of schedule, you'll look at all those factors, and the idea will be that if you use wins above bracket on the women's side, then it will make then you'll say, all right, we had a 50% chance of beating Marquette on the road, and we get credit for winning a 50-50 game versus, let's say, Columbia beating Penn, who had a 95% chance of winning that game and should only get 5 points for winning that type of matchup.
Amen to that. And I don't blame Dan Gavitt. Dan Gavitt's been in our meetings, talked to us many times. I blame Lynn Holtzman for this. I've asked Lynn to come on every year at the Big East meeting. She refuses to do so. And that's the difference. The leadership of the men and their tournament is far greater than the leadership of ours. Lynn's in charge of the women's tournament. She's the one that allowed those facilities to be done that way, allowed for not equal terms of even gifts and clothes and gear. She allowed that, and then she's allowing this net to happen. She's showing no respect for the women's game, and she refuses to get on. Now, Gino has asked her to join us in the Big East meetings in the summer, and she refuses to do so. So,
Maybe Val Ackerman has to step in and say, "Hey, look, I
I've
ran
asked,
the WNBA. You
yeah,
know, I'm arguably one of the five most important people in the history of women's sports. I'm gonna if you don't do this, that's the problem. That's one of the problems with Val Ackerman is that she sometimes, when she could make a statement and make something happen, she becomes now. All the respect and all the Val Ackerman, by the way,
yeah,
because
me
Big
too.
East should be where it is, but
No,
once in a while she has to assert herself in a situation like this and realize what type of power she has as such a respected figure from her days of running the WNBA.
yeah, and I have so much respect for Val and the whole Big East. These people work really hard. They're trying to support us and trying to do everything. I agree Val should step in, but Val shouldn't have to step in. Lynn, this is Lynn's job, and Lynn doesn't do it. And I've asked numerous times to have these meetings along with Gino and along with all of us. So I'm sure Val will step in this year because Val knows we're all fed up with it. But Jackie Campbell does a great job at the Big East. They do. At some point, this is more of a national situation, and we have questions for her. I mean, the last time she came on was years ago when she talked about the 3-point line, and I said, why would our 3-point line not be moved back like the men? She goes, well, we take data from all three levels, and the data doesn't show. I said, why would you take data from a Division III women's basketball league? Who cares? I said, they're non-scholarship kids. in women's, it's irrelevant. And she looked at me. I said, the problem with you is the men are gear everything towards D1 and everyone follows along. The problem with you is you think everyone's equal in D1, 2, and 3, and that's why we haven't grown. 5 years later, we've grown a lot. So that's no help from her, to be honest with you. She has to do a much better job of doing this. It starts with this net, starts with getting in on this, it starts with seeing what the vision is for women's basketball. A lot of us don't even know it because she doesn't say anything. Dan Gavitt's front and center talking about men's basketball, talks about the tournament. They talk about expansion, whether you agree with it or not. That's a topic for a different day. But Dan's always out there talking about it, right? You never see her talking about it. Never.
So the last thing I want to end on, the term eye test, it has kind of been killed off because as I was watching ESPN yesterday, I literally heard Charlie Crane mention like it's not the eye test, it's the optical metric. I believe that was the word. I mean, so here's the thing when it comes to your optical metrics. The record speaks for itself, and in terms of marketability and like what kind of games do you want to watch in the NCAA tournament? Why wouldn't you want to see a player like Faith Massonis making some of the plays that she makes, the circus shot like we saw on New Year's Day against Villanova? I mean, this is a fun team, and with a fiery coach like that, like you on the sideline, and like that's fun to watch. And anyone who does it, it's kind of like when Seton Hall men got shafted, and we had to get subjected to the torture of watching Virginia basketball.
Right. It's a perfect example. Perfect example. But again, the respect for the Big East men's league has gone down the last 2 years, and we'll see if Xavier gets in on the men's side this year as the fifth team. We have the national champion in men's basketball in our league the last 2 years, and you're telling me last year you could only take 3 teams. That was a colossal mistake. This year, and I will predict it now, you will have the national champion of women's basketball in our league, and you're only going to take 2 teams. That will be another colossal mistake. At some point, give respect for the Big East. That's all I ask. Yes, Faith is exciting. We have a JDE's one of the most exciting freshmen in the country. These other teams have good teams and good programs, and I respect, all the Ivy League teams, all the A10 teams. A lot of their head coaches are my friends, but they're picking and choosing, which they have their right to, of what their strengths are. I'm picking and choosing that. Once again, we have 8 losses to teams that have more than 20 wins. We have no loss over a team with a net of worse than 57. We have more quad 2 and 3 wins than most of these teams. And our non-conference strength of schedule was 80, which is better than most of these teams. With that being said, we're not afraid to play anyone. We went to neutral sites to play both LSU and USC, which are, almost impossible games to win. But we did it to get our team out there and get our brand out there. We tried play more Power Four teams. They wouldn't play us. You know, we've done everything we can. And once again, our league is ranked fifth. Take the other 4 leagues are ahead of us. We know who they are, and that's a big thing. Plus, if every time we've had an opportunity to be competitive, we have. And if you're going to worry about our margin of loss to UConn, why don't you take a look at when Iowa State played them? Why don't you take a look when some of these other teams played them? They lost too. And right now, UConn, we played UConn. The second half of the year, all of us, when they were healthy and ready to go. Ask South Carolina what it was like to play UConn. These other leagues that we're talking about don't have UConn, and we do. And we're going to have the national champion in women's basketball in our league. So don't do what you did to the men last year. Do what where you only took 3 teams, and one of them being the national champion.
Amen. Amen to that. I mean, I think you can sell paper to a tree, Tony.
Nah.
I'm being completely honest.
It's my players and my team, and like I said, I have a lot of respect for everyone. I just want everyone to do their job. This is what, like I said to someone today in the Big East, this is what I do for a living. This is my livelihood. This is my career. This is my staff's career. And most of all, our players have put out a tremendous effort. We've played shorthanded. The NCAA says, oh, yeah, we look at games that you're missing players. You do? Well, you better. Because Savannah Catalan missed 8 games. And when you look at her stats, she's not only a top 10 player in the league, she's probably a top 7 player in the league. She missed 8 of our 18 league games. So, and we had her, maybe we'll have a little less losses. But we have a good league. It's very strong. Like I said, we have the national champion in our league. We have the #1 net team in our league. And we have another team that's one of the best teams in the country. People forget they went to the Elite Eight a couple years ago, and like Pat said, I think it was Pat or you, they had the biggest upset, against Iowa. People forget that's how good Creighton is. It's the same players, just older. So, give our league respect. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I know I went on a tangent, but I'm very passionate about this. And this is the year that Seton Hall women's basketball, if we do our job, deserves to be in the NCAA.
Yeah,
No, that you
it's
did a
been
better job. You did a better job, coach, than I could do making that argument if you gave me 2 weeks to come up with, let's say, a 5 to 10 minute spiel about why the whole women's selection process is screwed up. And hopefully somebody in Indianapolis somebody in Indianapolis will straighten it out in the spirit of making the women's game on the same level as the men's game.
Yep.
The women deserve all the same, as people pointed out 5 years ago with the facilities debacle, the women deserve the same amount of respect that the men get. And if
Yes.
your selection process is screwed up, it is not equal respect. And that's hopefully Charlie Baker or somebody in the big office in Indianapolis notices this and will do what they have to do to make some corrections to the process. And if it means throwing out this Lynn Holtman woman who I didn't know what her name was before you mentioned it
And
tonight.
that's a problem, though. You knew who Dan Gavitt was. You don't know who Lynn Holtzman was. That says it all right there. I mean, the facts that you came up with, you obviously know women's basketball, both of you. You cited things on a national level of women's basketball, so you know the game. For you not to know her is a problem. That's a problem. And you just made my whole argument. Because we know Dan. No, we know Dan. I love Dan. I think Dan's tremendous.
And the
His
sad
father
thing
was
was,
great.
I mentioned him in context of why
Yes.
isn't he? I get he runs the men's tournament. On the other hand, he's a great basketball mind. So
Great.
why wouldn't Charlie Baker have him look into the situation and maybe say, what are they doing wrong? Report it back to Charlie Baker, and then have Charlie Baker sort of, look at this situation because the women's tournament is arguably the third most important college sports product behind football and men's basketball. Women's
Absolutely.
basketball is the third most important product in the whole chain of college athletics. And as you know, and Tim knows, the women's game has gotten so much exposure, in part thanks to Caitlin Clark, in part thanks to Paige Beckers, in part because of a whole lot of other really great players and coaches, Dawn Staley, Kim Mulkey at LSU. Look at all these personalities that we know of now that have made the women's game so important in the last 5 years. And you're going to tell me you're going to make them participate in a second class product simply because you don't have the vision of wanting the women's tournament to be at the state because somebody in Indianapolis is too lazy to do what they have to do to put it on the proper level that it
I,
needs to be at.
you said it. I didn't on this one, but I'm not disagreeing with you. So, but thank you guys. You've been wonderful. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. Most of all, just support Seton Hall women's basketball. The kids have been amazing. We have great kids. And, whatever tournament we're in, we're going to do our best to represent Seton Hall in the best way we can, like we always do.
well, the Pirates rode and to really make their big statement in Connecticut starts 9:30 Eastern on FS1. Coach B, thank you so much. And I got listen. I'm a big dog lover. I mean, we
Yeah.
got to shout out the special guest making a last second cameo.
Max, say hello, Max. Give Dad a kiss. Thank you. It's my guy.
I
So.
mean, we're gonna rally around Max. Max is gonna be the good luck charm that gets you that big signature win, presumably against Creighton in the semifinal round. But hey, one game at a time. It all starts Saturday. Coach, best of luck.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So for Coach B and Pat Madden, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, onwards to Tonio.